Here are 7 tools every sovereign individual needs in the age of AI. Now, there's so many tools, so much noise happening on X, Twitter. You're looking online, you're looking at all these AI people on Instagram, Facebook, whatever platform you're on, and they're all telling you hop on all these tools. But at the end of the day, a lot of it is just noise. And the crazy part about AI is now to really stand out in AI, and especially with all these tools, how much easier it is to use a platform or anything like that. Anyone can easily just vibe code and copy another product for your own use case scenario. So it's really about how you can filter out all the noise that is out there and then pick something that is right for you, that is durable, that actually lasts, and that isn't just going to get quickly replaced. So these are, in my opinion, some of the most foundational stacks I use, and I think they're going to be here for the long term. And then the thing about this is that it's more so about how you should think about picking the right tools for yourself versus just say you're married to these tools, because things can obviously change. It can be easily replaced by a competitor, or say something new can just come out and just be infinitely superior, right? Because in AI, everything here compounds, and it's compounded growth. So it gets compounded every single year, even better by orders of magnitude, not just like a simple web app or mobile app anyone can just easily copy and replicate. Like these AI tools, they are rapidly expanding in terms of how great their capabilities and features are. And now what you see in AI is going to be totally different in terms of what you see a year, 2, 3 from now. So it's really important to have like the right foundation from the very beginning, and then so you can grow and evolve with it. And one of the most important things is so you can easily just pick yourself up and move to somewhere else. You know what I mean? So you're not locked in, because a big popular competitive strategy when it comes to say software, these platforms, just so you understand their thinking, is that they want the vendor to lock you in. And a vendor lock-in is when they lock you into a platform, and it becomes very, very difficult to leave off of it because the platform is very sticky. This is how you can end up paying for subscriptions for years on end because their product is so good. And then on top of that, what happens when you build everything, your whole entire life, foundation and business on top of it, what happens is that it becomes very difficult to remove yourself off the platform. So here in the video, what I'm gonna be doing is showing you the 5 tools. So I know here it says 7, I should have wrote 5, but anyway, I'm just gonna continue on. So let's start with the very first one. So the very first one, I think this one's essential. This one's a huge one as of recent, especially with AI agents in AI. But let me explain why this is important, especially in the AI era, because AI thrives off context, memory, and any sort of files, so it can process it, tokenize some sort of output, and then from there give you some sort of result. So whether it's calling tools, whether it's retrieving and fetching information to give you a more informed decision, whether it's say to give you the proper context. I always use this example, but it's like going to your therapist, and imagine every single time you go to a therapist, they have zero idea or recollection of who you are, what your problems are, what you're going through. This therapist would be absolutely worthless. The same thing goes for a coach, because these coaches, they specialize in every single player or person they are working with. And from there, they can better personalize their experience so that the player or whoever is, say, working with the coach, they can get better results over time, right? Same thing goes for an AI. Context becomes absolutely king. And one thing I love about Obsidian is that Obsidian, you build in markdown formats and files, and this thing just renders everything in a nice, pretty UI. So you can have an easy, user-friendly way how to work with notes. So for instance, here's a note I had, and usually what I do is whether I'm reading a book, watching YouTube videos, researching online, I like to have like these various different formats in terms of like how I am drawing in information and then how I am potentially linking out to it. So you can see here inside of my notes, I have strategic ways how I actually link out to other notes, topics, subjects. So everything interconnects and actually create these sorts of graphs. And then when you can have like these sorts of interconnections and links, just like how your mind and memory works, because I'm not going to link this file here to another book. I'm also going to reference it to other memory chunks or say ideas and topics that whenever I think of this book, I also just as a by result of thinking of this book, I think of something else like spin selling as a concept. I think of high ticket closing. When I think of this book, I think of also Brian Tracy. So you want to structure a strong foundation with your Obsidian. So this video is not going to be about how to structure Obsidian. So I just want to be very clear on that. I can make a video on that, like how to like do everything I'm currently doing here, because I do have a pretty strong and sophisticated structure here that works really, really well for me. But the point of this video is not to like show you how to build it. The point is to understand the importance of having your own database context, because this thing is literally my brain. If I were to inject this thing and provide it to Claude or some sort of AI tool, it has instant understanding of all the problems I'm dealing with, stuff I'm going through, my journal access, what I'm reading, what I'm learning, And here's the most powerful part about it. I don't know if you've been following on, say, like YouTube or something like that, but if you have ever used Claude and if you've done anything fancy with it, what you can do now is you can put your Obsidian now on steroids, because recently what they did was they added a new feature where what you can do here is interact with a terminal with your Obsidian. And the thing is, like, when you use hooks and say like Claude or something like that, I created like custom hooks. So for instance, let's say like these are the various different hooks. So like if I were to press it initiates like a prompt and it does its thing. So like it can trigger a compaction. I can do a close day kind of thing where what that does is it reviews my notes of everything I did today, whether I took some notes in a specific coaching session, whether I journaled, whether say I created new notes. What it does is it fetches everything, puts it into my daily journal, and then from there I automated my whole entire daily journal processing. And I can schedule this out on a daily basis, so this is fully automated. What's even more is you can do this for the end of the week. So I have like an end of the week one. I also have like a quarterly one or a weekly review one. Wait, not this one. There's another one. I have a update current day memory hook in one of my local like AI assistant directories I have, where say in OpenClaw, for instance, the current day memory is automatically triggered, whereas say in my local instance it isn't. So I have a hook for that, so it automatically just fetches everything together and then just creates a new memory log. I can trigger that infinitely, and I can go even more further. So every time there is a compaction, I can do it right before the compaction as well. So it really depends on how sophisticated I want this thing to be, but you can literally pair your brain with say tools like Claude or anything else you're using to put it on crack with AI. I mean, because that's one of the biggest things in my opinion that was missing before with Obsidian. But now when you can pair it with AI and then you can empower your thinking, this is going to be an incredible way how you can use it. And what's more, before I leave off, say, Obsidian, is I love this tool whenever, say, I am working with a virtual private server or anything where I want to peep into the brain of my AI. Because here, for instance, this is one of my files from my OpenClaw virtual private server. I can see everything that is happening directly inside of my OpenClaw on a virtual private server versus say accessing it in markdown files. So it's an easy way how you can easily just write things in your own personal computer device, and then you can easily sync it with the virtual private server. So this is also like another hack. And then if you actually look into the brain of my AI, you can also see it pretty much in the same way how everything is working. And you can even automate the full process. I personally haven't done that. I don't find much practical value in it in like what I'm doing, but there are certain use cases where you can automate this whole entire thing, and it just makes sense to do that. Especially if you were to like add it into the heartbeats every single day, you can have the AI clock in, and then what it can do is just automate this whole entire process. The other thing I want to mention is Claude Desktop. This is a super powerful tool, especially if you're a beginner and you don't want to set up Claude code. It's extremely frustrating and annoying. You can use this product to pretty much do everything, right? From coding to say getting work done for yourself, to automating tasks, to replacing virtual assistants, to setting up schedules, to think with it. So there's three key features. There's chat, there's Cowork, and then there's Claude Code. So Claude Code, if you're looking to code projects, you're looking to vibe code it just with plain English, you can just pick the directory of where you want to work in. So this is one of my local Obsidian vaults. And then from there, I can just interact with it. I can build stuff with it. I also have another one. So this one here, Argo, this is actually a repository where I work with, say, Cursor and say Anti-Gravity, which we'll get into just a moment. But I'll show you how that looks like in just a moment. But what we do here is I can literally just connect my Claude to it, and then I can code projects. It has instant access because I have a bunch of environment variables inside of it. So what we can do here is like I have like this whole entire local repository where it can access, say, my email list. It can access my Vercel. It can access a tool called Composio, which can then even access more things like my Calendly, my calendar. It can access so many different things and integrations I've gave it access to, because that just makes the tool even more powerful. So when you have like a local repository of all the stuff, it kind of mimics what say OpenClaw can do, but you just do it in a local instance. So there are some trade-offs with that. So I'm just experimenting it on my own just to see if I can find anything useful for myself. But nonetheless, it's powerful. You can just directly work with the AI here because that's instant context of like whatever Claude understands about you and whatever information and memory you're also building in that. Whereas say with Cowork, you can get this thing to access your computer, various different files. It can start creating projects for you. It can set up automations and schedulings. I'm not going to say this is the best. This is more so for like personal use cases. If you're trying to do this at scale for like a business or say even like a medium-sized business or however big your organization is, then that's probably not the way to go, because this thing's built for say personal use cases and it can't just really handle all that load. Especially when you're like accessing your computer, this thing burns a shit ton of tokens. I don't think that's the best way to go about it. And then when it comes to chat, I always use this thing because it's probably one of the strongest thinking companions. It puts your thinking on steroids. I don't think they are too biased in terms of being just a yes man. I think there's a metric for that called like psychopathy or something like that. I forget exactly what it is, but there's some sort of AI metric in the labs they're measuring of like how much of a yes man your AI actually is. And I think Claude is actually the most ruthless in terms of that. It has its own thinking capability and it doesn't just like lean into your biases. So it's actually a pretty strong thinking companion. It helps you actually promote critical thinking. Now, here's the thing where I mentioned about having an AI assistant, right? Because if you're doing things at scale, this is probably not the best idea. Whereas if you need like a small cracked personal AI assistant, either go with OpenClaw or something like a local AI agent. Probably a lot of you are familiar with what the hell OpenClaw even is. I'm not going to go too much into OpenClaw in this video. More so, I'm going to dive into my local AI. So as you can see here, it has a sort of similar structure to the Obsidian, except it doesn't have the pretty UI. But this is my local instance of OpenClaw. What I did was it's pretty much like a fork of what exists on the virtual private server. Just I made this kind of my own, and some files here are useful, some of them aren't, and they actually don't serve any purpose. But really the whole point of this is just to have my own local AI. So then say when I'm coding projects, or say I want this thing to access various different tools, everything's stored in local environment variables file, or say I want to create various different deliverables, it'll create things here. It has its own memory and stuff like that. So the whole point of this is to have a personal AI assistant on hand, because I'm not automating tasks all the time and you don't need to automate everything, but it's good to have context of like who you are as an individual. So if I were to say, ask this thing to like reference to my Obsidian, it can do that because it can access my computer, it can go there and then update anything that's necessary into its own file base here. Now there are definitely ways you can automate this thing, make it more powerful. I just haven't done that. I don't find any real use case scenario for me right now. I just want to be as practical as possible. But what this does do is make me super productive in terms of like 10xing my productivity, because it has access to all these various different tools, softwares I use, and then it can easily just say log into my accounts and do something, where I just give it a simple prompt and then say it spits out a whole entire video. It can say connect to my N8N, or say any sort of social media content posting platform, post stuff automatically for me, even manage my ads or anything like that. Because I've created all the token accesses, I've created all the skills, and I created the tool access inside of it. And it's literally just as easy as just prompting this thing. So you don't even need to like code anymore. You know what I mean? You could just prompt the AI and it just does everything. So I literally just have a bunch of conversation threads. It puts in the work. I give it access to anything I need it to. And then from there, we just get to work. We just cook things. And the thing is, like, I don't even have to say work in actual repository or directory of the new app or say product I'm spinning up. I could just literally work in here. It'll create it in a specific directory that I've taught it to. And then from there, we'll just work with everything from here, because you already have context of everything about yourself, who you are, what you're doing, what you want this AI to be as a personality. And then you could just work in this directory and then code the project in another one. So I think it's actually something super powerful and useful. Pretty much the same thing, very similar to what OpenClaw offers, but I found this one to be pretty powerful in terms of like my use cases, because I'm not using Claude in OpenClaw, but nonetheless, there are its own trade-offs. And say OpenClaw and then say having this run locally on your own computer has its own advantages. You know what I mean? So it's really just about finding what fits your workflow. But for me, at least, this does 10x my productivity, because at the end of the day, if I have to just outsource this to an AI and it could just do it, and then I'm focusing on something else, and I don't have to do the manual process of say creating the campaigns in like an email list, or say some sort of automation, and Claude can just do that because it has access to my N8N account, or it can figure out some unique way because I've given it so many tools and access, then I'd rather trade that off and not do it myself. You know what I mean? Another one I want to mention is Cursor AI and Antigravity. So we were just in Cursor, so this is one of the most powerful AI coding tools. You can literally just prompt it. They're always on top of it. I haven't personally been using them like that, but I like to use my Claude Code account in this. So I just activated it by an extension. And then from there, I'm just using Claude inside of it. I haven't subscribed to them in a while, but I do like their interface. And there are times where I'm considering, hey, let's actually use it. Now, what I'm actually using nowadays a lot is Antigravity, especially if you like taking advantage of the free plan. Antigravity is basically the same thing. It's an IDE for coding, but you don't have to be overwhelmed by what the heck is going on here, because you could literally just pick a folder where to start something in and then just work with the coding on the side, right? It offers everything, say, a typical coding environment would. Like you've got your terminal here, you can code on the side, you can pick your models. They do have a very generous free plan. So every single week, your Claude Sonnet, and this is all free right now, right? Which is the crazy part. So you get your own like usages reset of Claude, GPT, OSS. Personally, I've not been a fan of this model. It kind of sucks, in my opinion, for coding. I've been using the Flash, so you get like a super generous tier of just using the Flash. So you really don't need to subscribe to say any like basic plan of say on Cursor to have this thing, because this thing, it'll carry you for the whole week, especially if you're not doing that much coding. So that's another good thing. And then also their Gemini 3.1 Pro, High, and Low. So these are actually some pretty good models for coding. So that's my stack there for the Cursor AI and then anti-gravity without say, going over the budget. But at the end of the day, just like one last thing on this is that if you literally just have Claude Code and then say anti-gravity, you could just pay $20 a month to have like infinite coding access. And I'm not saying infinite. If you're like a heavy user, you're probably gonna have to subscribe and go up. But if you're trying to like find workarounds where you just need enough to code and get things shipped and done, then say a $20 a month plan with Claude Code and then anti-gravity stack, that's like all you really need. And then also every single month, I think Cursor AI resets your usage, so you can also use that. And then the last thing I want to add to like this whole sovereign stack is that if you have your own virtual private server, I think that's actually pretty key now, especially since like I hopped on the whole AI trend. I've started using virtual private servers even more. And the reason why they're so powerful is because you have your own environment for the AI, especially if you're not trying to invest, say, into a Mac Mini or any of these like hardwares or something like that. I think there is a use case for long term why you probably should, but especially if in the beginning, if you're just trying to have your own stack, I think having your own virtual private server is powerful because you can always upgrade or go down. You could just get the right plan that makes sense for you in terms of how much RAM, how much disk space there is for the virtual private server. And then from there, what you can actually do is you can have your own AI environment for the employee or assistant that you have versus say having this thing run on your computer, especially like OpenClaw. If this thing's like doing stuff all the time, you want this thing to like screw up your whole entire computer. So just like you're giving an employee access to a full entire workspace, you probably want one for your virtual private server. It's just a really good security precaution so nothing screws up and then you're like pissed off. You wake up pissed off because it like did something stupid that it wasn't supposed to do. I think that's one advantage. Another advantage is just understanding how to work with the servers, because when you understand and know how to work with these things, it's actually pretty powerful. Because I don't know if you're aware, but a lot of these like very developer friendly platforms, say like N8N, let's say also Postez, they offer free versions of their product where if you host it yourself, you can literally just have your own automations. Like for instance, N8N. I deployed my own N8N instance on a virtual private server and it's free. I don't have to pay, say, an extra $20, $30 a month with just a limited amount of automations that I really need, nothing else. Plus also too, it's a pretty powerful platform in terms of like what they offer. So there are some trade-offs to that if you like do something like this way, because you're probably gonna have to use your own keys. There's probably gonna be some more hoops you have to go around in terms of like hooking everything up. The platforms, when they host it for you, they make it extremely easy so you don't have to go through all that crap yourself. But there are some trade-offs like nonetheless with this. But if you want to become like fully sovereign, like have your own, say, virtual environment, right? Nothing can like really stop you from it. You can host your own instances of open source tools where they make it free if you just host it somewhere to be deployed. And I do foresee in the future that like being able to like rent compute or having access to some sort of GPU or CPU with AI models, especially if you can't afford, say, a piece of hardware, or they become very expensive over time. If you're just renting it out from a platform or a provider, you can just instantly start spinning up a bunch of AI agents, a bunch of various different tools, and you're really just renting for whatever you're using or whatever amount of compute time they allocate to you. So like whatever you're subscribing to, right? It's mostly all pay-per-use. At the end of the day, you can turn them on or off, upgrade up or down whenever you want. Some platforms don't let you upgrade down if you do upgrade up, so be mindful of that. And one thing also to be aware of is just if you ever are going to use a virtual private server, just make sure you have a migration plan in place, because if you don't and you unsubscribe, all your stuff is going to get deleted. So make sure you're backing it up somehow. But nonetheless, that'll be all for the video. These are my top 5 stacks in terms of like being a sovereign individual in the age of AI. So what do you think about these? I'm curious, what do y'all think? Also, if you want me to create a video on the whole thing around Obsidian, like how I have my whole entire system laid out, let me know. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one.